Ladies and gentlemen, this is Reaction. This is the tube map nearly looked very different by the channel J Foreman. I guess this is one of his unfinished London series. I guess he's doing that, right? I've watched multiple videos, I think, about that, which is really fun. He goes really in deep about certain things about London that is famous, but I guess the things that people don't know about. So London Tube, basically the underground subway system, right? I remember this because in World War II, I think, when London was getting bombed, people took shelters there. I think they did the same thing in World War II, I guess. But there was more bombing in World War II, I guess. So I remember the photos where people are just basically lying there on tracks and just, sheltering there while there are bombs falling, which is fucking ridiculous. So I guess this, tube system is very old. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. Check out the reaction, there's a link in the description. And yeah, let's do it.
The tube map is an icon of London, just like Big Ben, the Tower of London, the London Eye and M&M's World. It's instantly recognisable to locals and tourists alike, known and loved and parodied all over the world. With a new version coming out every few months, some people are properly obsessed with the tube map, with vast collections, and can spot the subtlest of differences between different versions. Ugh, look at them. Massive bunch of nerds. But don't take this map for granted. This map very nearly looked very different, and the London it's a map of might have looked very different as a result. So, what is the story behind this map?
Yeah, unfinished London.
In the mid-19th century, when privately run underground railway lines first started popping down all over
19th century.
London, the only maps of them available were the ones published by the private companies themselves, showing their own services in clear bold and rival services, if they felt like it, in narrow, faint lines they didn't want you to notice. Because rival companies were often competing for the same passengers, they very often went out of their way to be uncooperative. This circular route was operated by two rival companies who hated each other. The Metropolitan Railway ran trains clockwise, and the confusingly similarly named Metropolitan District Railway ran trains anti-clockwise. Long story. If you wanted to go just one stop but you bought your ticket from the wrong booth, you had to go the long way round the circle. And there were plenty more examples of uncooperativeness where this came from. For example, if you wanted to change trains at Bank Station, you had to take the lift up to the street, cross the road, buy another ticket, and then take the lift all the way back down again. London's underground railways could have been
I can see that back then, obviously, they wouldn't have thought of all the quirks here and there. This is early times. But still, it's so fucked up. Obviously, it's privately owned, so it's like, entering a circus or something, like a privately owned business or something, right? I mean, in today's world, whenever you go to any public transport, you just think that some kind of a local government, municipality, whatever, or there are just basically rules that regardless if there's private or government owned, the easiest way will be, I guess, given to you, and I guess they all cooperate with each other, right? That's just given nowadays when you really think about the transport. Back then, imagine that, like somebody has to travel a long distance just because they enter in some wrong company, which is kind of fucked up.
So much more useful and attracted so many more passengers if they were all run together as a coordinated system. But it would take someone with a colossal bank account to make that happen. Fortunately for Londoners, in 1902 that someone came along in the form of ambitious American railway tycoon Charles Tyson Yerkes, who had a colossal bank account, a colossal moustache, and a wife called Gutteridge.
This is my wife. Go on, tell him your name.
Gutteridge.
Charles's very American idea was to run a railway network, a group of lines stretching in all directions across the city, where with one ticket you could start your journey on one line and end it on another. So he set up a company called Underground Electric Railways of London, or UERL for short, or UERL for shorter. With all the money he'd piled up, he went on an underground railway shopping spree, including 4 lines that hadn't even been finished yet. By November 1905, Charles Yerkes was the proud owner of the Charing Cross, Euston and Hampstead Metropolitan District, Great Northern, Brompton and Piccadilly, Baker Street and Waterloo Railways. And by December 1905, he was dead. With the very shrewd move of dying, he avoided having to pay back any of the huge debts he'd built up. But his dream of creating an underground network in London had come true. The UERL was a properly integrated system with common ticketing and station buildings that looked really similar. And a proper network needed a proper map. And so, in 1908, the UERL published this. The first map that showed all the underground lines in London mapped on one map, including the ones UERL didn't own. It had some really handy innovations. Each line was given equal thickness, and each line was given a different colour, features that are familiar to us today, even if the colours aren't too familiar.
The Piccadilly line in yellow!
This complete map of the whole network was very useful.
I like that, the original one was kind of like a loop or something, right? Because there was two different companies. This is more like a map that makes sense, right? Lines that run longer, some of the extra lines just because, some of the stations are too far away or pass through too much stations. So this is like, make sense type of a map. So I guess that guy did it with the big mustache.
But it wasn't very easy to read. With all the tube lines and roads and landmarks and Army and Navy and auxiliary stores, it was a messy clutter with too much information and looked like a plate of spaghetti. The problem was, the task of creating a map of the whole network that was both useful and easy to read was a notoriously difficult one. Lots of companies at this time published...
that game Metro? What if they made that game in London? Look at all this stations, it would be so fucking awesome. Then again, the game kind of spans through countries. Right? You go from Moscow to Germany to God knows in Italy, Venice. This game would have to be just in London. But then again, if you make kind of a real life scale London game, that would be a big enough map, right? That would be fun. And using real tube as stations, this would be awesome.
Their own maps of London's network, each with their own approaches, some of them bonkers. This one's my favourite, the Wonderground map by Max Gill. Simultaneously incredibly detailed and incredibly completely useless.
Why is that dragon there? What is this? Oh, I guess that's supposed to be a symbol of something.
Detailed and incredibly completely useless. Mapping the entire system was only about to get even difficulter. By the early 20s, the London Underground had begun sprawling uncontrollably out in all directions into the distant suburbs. To help manage this growth, the UERL appointed a new head of publicity, Frank Pick. Pick was obsessed with the tube's corporate identity, the notion that the whole system should feel more togethery. It was Pick's idea for every station to have a roundel, the iconic logo with the red circle and blue line, and for every sign to use the same font with the perfectly round O's and the little diamonds for dots above the eyes, and to commission all those lovely posters that your middle-class friends have in their kitchens. Most importantly, Pick wanted every leaflet and every poster on every train, on every platform, in every station to use the same map design. And so, in search of the perfect map, Pick turned to a designer named, all together now, Frank Stingemore. Frank Stingemore's map from 1924 used the River Thames as a geographical reference and nothing else. No roads, no landmarks, no nothing. Just a plain beige background. With easiness of reading at the top of Stingemore's priority list, his map did something that was
Wait a minute. I think I remember Fallout 3's map, right? Which kind of uses the same type of thing. And lots of maps, subway maps does that. Just use something like river or something as a reference. The map will have river in it, but basically nothing else in the station. Damn, that's clever.
Cheating. To fit all the detail in, Stingemore took the naughty shortcut of not bothering to draw the distant suburbs to scale. For example, these stations on what we now call the Northern Line were bunched dishonestly together in a totally fictional straight line. But the thing is, though, that's the thing. The thing is, this is the thing. The thing is, this didn't matter. For passengers trying to get from station A to station B, this map still served its purpose perfectly well. Unless you were driving the train, why did you need to know the exact length or exact bendiness of each bit of track? Come to think of it, even if you're driving the train, you don't really need to know that either, do you? Frank Pick was very happy with Stingemore's map, and the public were happy with it too. Stingemore's innovation had shown that a map could still be useful even if the scale was...
Who cares about those outside places? They're outside. Fuck it, let's just draw them together.
...distorted. And it was this concept that inspired another designer to do something even more radical. And his name was...
Is it Harry Beck?
It's got to be.
It wasn't last time.
I think it's Harry Beck.
Should we say Harry Beck?
No, it's not Harry Beck.
I think it is this time.
Let's say
Harry Beck. Henry Charles Beck, known as Harry to his no friends, was a 29-year-old technical draftsman working at UERL. It was his job to draw up diagrams of the tube's signalling systems. And then it wasn't his job anymore when he got made redundant in 1931. Harry must have really missed his old job, because after leaving the UERL, he spent his spare time working on an extremely nerdy work-related project. He nerdily imagined what it would look like if all the stations on the London Underground were represented connected like in a circuit diagram. He'd seen strip maps of individual lines that totally ignored geography. How hard could it be to combine them all together? While Stingemore's approach was to be a little bit naughty with scale, Beck's approach was that scale could absolutely go itself. Harry drew the entire network using only straight lines that were vertical, horizontal, or at 45 degrees. Here's one of his rough drafts where he rubbed out lines and replaced them with straighter ones.
It's
When
like
he finally
surrogate.
finished, it looked like this. An elegant, colourful design, with the stations in central London spaced evenly apart and the suburban stations bunched up close together. No opportunity was missed for symmetry, equal spacing, and parallelity. If you compare his design to a scale map, you can see just how not to scale and frankly mad it was.
Oh,
Harry's
really?
so-
Right?
Scale map, you can see just how not
Well, this is kind of like a straight line,
to
right?
scale.
Look at that.
frankly.
Yeah. And I guess he's not trying to do that. He's just trying to say what's the next station. This line is not much of a distance or the direction. It's just what's the next, stop in, I guess, virtually the same direction. I don't know. Kind of makes sense. This looks good. I don't know.
Mad it was. Harry's so-called journey planner was not a map, it was a diagram. But for the very specific job it was trying to do, a diagram was better than a map. By totally ignoring the concept of scale, he was able not only to fit all the stations in, but to make it much easier to read than Stinchmore's map. It also gave the impression of a cohesive, comprehensive, coordinated, connected system. It also looked awesome. Harry was very pleased with himself, and a thought occurred to him. This should be the official map for London transport. Frank Pick is going to love this. So, later in 1931, Harry marched back into the offices of the UERL, which was now called London Transport, to show his diagram to Frank Pick. But Harry was wrong. Frank Pick didn't love Harry's map at all. Pick refused to publish Beck's map on the grounds that it was inaccurate and that the public wouldn't understand it. There was indeed a disadvantage to the scale-free approach. Some stations looked much further apart than they really were, which might make tourists crowd onto the tube for needless journeys, such as Queen's Road to Bayswater, which you can easily do on foot in 19.19 seconds. But Harry Beck was convinced that his design was the future of the London Underground, and tried several times to persuade Frank Pick. Eventually, Frank Pick gave in, and agreed that if Harry Beck agreed to leave him alone, he'd agree to print a very limited trial run. A small handful of copies were printed and sent to a small handful of stations, with an apologetic cover saying,
"A new design for an old map. We should welcome your comments."
To the surprise of Pick and the "I told you so" of Beck, the comments they welcomed were overwhelmingly positive. The public seemed to have no trouble understanding Beck's concept. They blooming loved it. In 1933, Harry Beck's diagram officially
I mean, yeah, his issue that, the station close to it kind of gives you the idea that it's far away, but you can just walk there. Most people who travel there would basically know that. They know their local areas. And, any basically foreigners or somebody who doesn't know it, how many of them are going to be there, right? I don't know. So it's a pros and cons, but I guess pros outweighs things. I don't know. It looks good. Look at that.
Placed Frank Stinchmore's map as the standard journey planner, used on all leaflets and all posters across the London Underground. Harry Beck had done it! But little did he know, things were about to go very, very wrong for him. Want to find out more? Stay exactly where you are and wait for the next dose of Unfinished London.
Oh, okay, that's it.
Hi folks, just to say thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry it took a little longer than usual for me to get this video out, but I do have a really good excuse. Just a few weeks ago, the most amazing thing in the world happened to me. I downloaded Surfshark VPN.
Surfshark VPN is an app and browser extension that encrypts your internet data and
You thought I was talking about my kid? No. I downloaded the VPN and then then I'm browsing sites and can't stop. All right. All right. But I love Jay Foreman and his comedy style is really good. I like how that guy was just stuck there, whether he's showering or whatever he's doing. And I like how he's acting out scenes, right? Especially the American thing with the mustache. Yeah. Well, I love this, right? The original one kind of makes sense, right? I mean, first time obviously any invention happen, government does it, right? Government does it, then obviously private sector is going to get into it. So I understand when the tube system was kind of like privately owned, but obviously it became nuisance. And when something is so important as a transport, eventually governments are going to step in. Like, we have to make this easy for people, not just as a corporate thing where people just try to make profit from nothing else, right? If somebody goes to some other company, they'll just take a long distance just to reach the same destination. That's not going to work. So yeah, obviously that happened. But this the latest thing that he did, where it was just a diagram, right? I mean, I never thought of that. I always kind of assumed that there must be some scale distance to it, even though it looks like that. I thought there would be, I mean, I don't know, if some dots are a bit far away, I guess that was up to scale, but apparently not. But it kind of makes sense. If you're gonna make everything up to scale, it would just look way too weird. And that other map with the dragon and shit, how weird was that? It's just like Dungeon and Dragon map or something. That was weird. So yeah, the latest thing kind of works. Alright people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I guess I'll see you next time.